Ladies and gentlemen, we have with us tonight Mr. John Grundy.
Ah, thank
All
you.
right, they can stop clapping. There's a bunch of people like hanging from the rafters and
Just off
settling on
scene,
the floor and
just off
yeah,
camera.
off camera exactly. It is a live studio audience though, so bear with them. They tend to interrupt and laugh at people. I think they're laughing at you right now. I don't know why. All right, so John, before we get into your writing, tell me a little bit about yourself. Where you from? What do you like to do?
My name is John Grundy. I write under John W. Grundy because there's already an author named John Grundy who does travel logs about the UK and such. So I used my middle initial. So John W. Grundy. I'm from Massachusetts, and I've been a small business owner with my wife for like a few decades now. Who took advantage of the pandemic to do something different. And this book came from that.
Awesome. So, yeah, what industry are you in then?
We were in the commercial cleaning business.
Okay. I actually worked at a service master for many years, more on the fire, water damage restoration side, but
Mhm.
commercial cleaning some here and there nonetheless. So I'm somewhat familiar with the industry. That's kind of cool. Small
Yeah,
world.
yeah, we were more in the transportation industry, sort of, servicing coaches and stuff like that. But
Okay. Awesome. So you mentioned the pandemic and writing, and I was going to talk about this a little bit later, but I guess this is a good time to bring it up. You wrote 246,000 words,
yeah,
which
is that
is
a
a
lot?
that's a lot. Yeah, that's
A lot, yeah.
my math is maybe 700 to 800 pages or so. Is that right?
Yeah, it was 830 pages until I realized that that was cost prohibitive to distribute. So, um, shrank the font, shrank the line height, got it from 32 to 41 lines per page or something. I got it down to 632, but it's still the same word count. And um, yeah, yeah,
Dense
it's a lot.
632. Yeah. Cool. So did business slow down during the pandemic and that's kind of why you took
Yeah,
this on?
because yeah, exactly. Yeah, because the businesses we served, they stopped running. And um, we had been doing it for decades anyway. So it was a fortuitous time for us to get out of it anyhow, which was fine for us. So
Okay.
we transitioned out, and I'm trying my hand at this.
Okay. And what are your writing habits like in order to pump out 246,000 words?
Uh, it was well, I need absolute silence when I write. I think so. I need like a cone of darkness and no distraction all around me. So typically, what I would do is I would just write at night. I would eat my dinner at a dinner time, and then afterwards I would relax a bit, take a 30-minute nap, power nap, and then I would come in and sit right here, except for with all the lights off, except for just the keyboard illuminated, and write from 9 or 10 at night until 4 in the morning, something like that. Whatever whatever was able to come out, and then sleep until noon, and then I would edit the next day, but always in a different location. I would take it on my phone or my tablet, and I'd sit in the living room or just get away from the desk and try to read it in a different format, and I would edit whatever I wrote the last 3 days. So there was always a rolling sort of edit to make sure that they flowed together. Um,
Yeah.
and yeah, I just kept doing that all the way through religiously. Even if I didn't know what to write, I found that you have to come in and sit in front of the keyboard, even if you have nothing, even if you don't want to, even if you just say, okay, I'll do it for 5 minutes and I'll just read what I wrote yesterday and write one more sentence. More often than not, a lot of my favorite parts came from just forcing myself to go in. I'm like, oh, and it would just come out. But you take a day
Yeah.
off, and it becomes very easy to take the next day off.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's interesting. Like a lot of people, writing is a hobby for a lot of people, and for the people that want to take it more seriously as a business, you have to treat it like a job. Like you said, show up when you don't want to even and force yourself to do it. Like you can't just call your boss and tell them, "Hey, I don't feel like coming in today." I mean, you can, but you'll find yourself without a job if you do that too many times.
Mhm.
Same thing with the book. If you do that too many times, you'll find yourself without a book.
Well, I might have
But
had the benefit of so many years of my wife and I working for ourselves, anyways. So
Mhm.
had that sort of discipline. And at the
Yeah.
time I started writing it, it was never supposed to be a business. It was something I was doing for fun for a few friends. And
Mhm.
only later did did I realize this might actually be something?
Yeah.
Um, and that's
So
when I
so let's
really,
come back to why you're writing for friends in a second here. One final question on kind of your processes. So you're writing 5 or 6 hours a day on average. How many words are you pumping out a day?
it varied wildly. It could be 300, 500 words. It could be 1,500, 2,000 words. Um, I don't know. I don't think there was I didn't have a set number. I did have a set number a month that I wanted to. And when I originally started, it was in November and I was doing the No Mo Rimo. I'm like, you know what, I'll do that with the November Write 'em novel month for people who don't know,
Mm.
where they want you to do 50,000 words. And they just say, just get it on the page and edit it later. And I can't write that way. I
Daily.
can't just put garbage down and then like clean it up later. I have to be a little bit. So, but I did try to meet 30,000 words a month every month. That's what I tried to do. And I used various charts and graphs to make sure I was on schedule and okay, I'm falling behind. Yeah, 30,000 a month is what I think I did on average.
Okay. Awesome. Well, yeah, thanks for walking me through that. So let's talk about your novel now. So To Castle Kingside, clear chess references here. I used to play a little bit of chess in my youth. We'll say I was second in the county in eighth grade, if that counts for
Ah.
anything. But it's funny. There's kind of like a chess craze going on right now. A lot of people are checking out chess again. I guess you could say there's like
Mhm.
YouTube channels, and there was Queen's Gambit or whatever that came out a couple years ago. So people are taking
Yeah.
interest again. And I hopped on to chess.com recently. And I just got smashed. Like I am not good anymore. People they're way better than they used to be a couple decades ago. But
I'm sure
tell
you
me
could still beat me.
about so tell me then about what the title has to do with
Well,
chess
the
and
title, I mean, there isn't, it's, the title is used in a metaphorical sense. One of the characters in the book is called Rook. Um, Castling Kingside is a maneuver using a rook.
Mhm.
Without giving too much away from the title, it's used in a metaphorical sense to describe certain plot aspects of the book, which become clear maybe afterwards, after you've gone
Okay.
through it.
So Rook, then let's talk about the name that you've given your character. It's a nickname, or is that their actual name?
That's their actual name. So this rook is an alien species. It comes from a species called the SETI, and they are named after the SETI program on the search for extraterrestrial intelligence for people who don't know. And the reason they're named after that is that their language, this is a feline race, their language is unpronounceable by humans and the other organic species. So they take common names. So that's what their species was called after the program that first detected them, and they take what's called a coalition name, a common language name, and that was this character's choice.
Okay, got it. So you mentioned that there are six main characters in your book, and you just briefly alluded to right now like a rich universe, we'll say. So why don't you walk me through some of these characters, some of their races, and world building in general, or universe building in your case.
Yeah, well, the book is based off of um, a game that my friends and I played back when we were 18. This is in the late 80s, a role playing game. So we got sick of Dungeons and Dragons, and we decided we wanted to do something sci-fi. We made up our own thing. Um, the rules were taken from dozens of games, but the universe itself was made up by us, and so it consists of the humans and a race called the Metamorph, a shape-shifting metamorph, the SETI, which is a feline race, a sentient android race, and those together are the coalition races. And then there's several other neutral races. There's a race called the Lighten, which is based off of a dark elf sort of. There's a race called the Shammai, which is um, sort of another well, they're harder to describe. A semi-warlike race, and then there's of course there's another empire of there's many races in the universe, but
Mhm.
um, this these characters that are brought together are a soldiers for hire, soldiers of fortune, and they in this particular universe they are corporate mercenaries in a very literal sense. So this is a universe where the mega corporation, the intergalactic corporation, um, has its way, out in space is not as much policing as there might be otherwise, and they're able to use mercenary forces against other companies. It might be to steal, Pepsi wants to steal Coke's recipe and they send a team of soldiers to get it. Or it could be simply protecting their own interests. It could be quelling an indigenous threat on some planet that they want to mine. And this was how this mercenary team, which is called Parliament, teams in this universe, they name themselves like a band might name themselves. And there's a certain fame that goes with it. And there's a tolerance to these teams existing. They're allowed to exist as long as they follow certain rules and don't get the general public involved in the fray of what they do with each other. But this team is comprised of two humans, three of the feline race, and an android doctor, an android trauma surgeon,
Okay.
uh, who are now together for some 30 years. So this book is actually about a team that's nearing the end of their career and contemplating retirement, and who get pulled into one more adventure by an old face.
Okay. So these six characters then they're on what you might consider like a quest. It's not necessarily following six different storylines throughout the universe.
No, it isn't. No, it's, there's an overarching storyline, but I really tried to give them each their own. They do have their own arc, their own sort of arc of discovery, or this part, where they separate out and you can follow each character, and I tried to make it a little bit of a character study of each of these characters, because these are characters that I've actually known for 30 years. These are characters from the game that have a real life behind them. So to me, it was very easy to give a life on the paper.
Yeah. So it's ironic that you mentioned this whole D&D style tabletop game. One of my friends, he had the idea for something similar. His name is Paul. He's actually been on the show a couple times. And so he created this, I don't remember what it was called, but it was very similar to what you're talking about. I think it was like kind of science fiction, futuristic D&D style game. And we played this every Wednesday for a few months. And I remember we had our character sheets, and you had to roll negative traits, right? So a couple of my negative traits were like overconfident, and I didn't stop talking, and I had a lisp. So literally for every Wednesday, I was just talking for like 2 hours in a lisp, and everyone just got pissed. And I think I was kind of the reason everybody stopped, because they're like, Matt, you're taking it too serious. And they're like, tone it down a little bit. I was like, guys, seriously, like we're just doing it. Let's go check that cave out. And so I'm kind of on board with you right now, like on the whole D&D style game. I like
Yeah,
those. My question though comes to your characters. Are they drawn from your real life friends? Are there hints of them that you
there.
play the game
Yeah,
with?
there's a sort of so initially as I write them, they're based partly on my friends' personality, partly on the way they played, but imbued with parts of myself as well, because there's certain aspects of myself that each character, this one
Yeah.
leans this way and this way, and there's certainly, now that I look back, I can identify where I'm there, but very quickly the characters just took on lives of their own and
Hmm.
became who they were on the paper, an offshoot perhaps of the way I imagined that they were many years ago, the personality traits that I imagined them to have, but those took hold and became their own thing pretty quickly.
Hmm. And your friends, you said you wrote this for your friends. Do they know how each of the characters in your book were generated and which one they might be?
Oh, they know exactly. Yeah, no, these are the same names. They know exactly who is who. Yeah, they were my first group of readers who, were the ones who encouraged me to polish it up and put it out for the general
Hmm.
public. So, which
That's
is what I
cool.
did. Yeah, yeah, they know
Yeah,
exactly.
that's really how do I say this? I think it's fun if you can track something over 20 years and then encourage one of your friends to like rekindle something and then be a part of it. Because even if they didn't really sit with you for 6 hours a day and write it, I'm sure they still feel a part of this.
Hmm.
And did you ever like consult with them on, hey, I'm having trouble with this scene, like what would happen, or like,
Yeah, I did. Yeah, early on, yeah, I would ask, what do you, what do you think your character would do in this? But after a certain amount of time, because I was writing it for them, I didn't want to give too much away either, because I wanted
mm,
it to be spoiler free for them. But
yeah,
yeah, but they were, yeah, so they were the first ones who went through it, my first beta readers, and and gave me feedback from there that I used to um, during my edit phase. So yeah,
mhm. Okay. So back to the universe a little bit. You mentioned it's a science fiction and fantasy. And so in contemporary stories, we have Star Wars, there's science fiction, and then you have the Force, which makes it kind of fantasy-esque. And then in
yeah,
Dune,
yeah.
similar with the voice. How is yours sci-fi
Well,
fantasy?
this one. I try to not necessarily do super hard science fiction. I try to do things that are realistic without getting into the science behind them. There's no technology that's magical. There's certain racial traits that, whether it's ESP or bioluminescence or some, that don't necessarily have to be magical or mystical or force related, but um, the fantasy aspect comes in more in just, I think, in the storytelling. I tend to, which I didn't know this but I started writing, but I tend to write in more of a fantasy style, a little more prose, perhaps. I like the setting descriptions and the world building, and it's an ensemble cast that are going on. I don't know if I want to use the word quest, but you could say it's a quest. They're going to trying to find one of their teammates, and so they're going on a quest together as an ensemble, which is very reminiscent of a lot of fantasy novels where you bring together people with different traits, and you've got all the different classes and you put them together. I think people who like fantasy and don't typically read science fiction will be able to follow and get right into it. And I think people who like science fiction, there's plenty of that for them. And I don't know. I don't think the role playing aspect of it will make much of a difference either. I think most people who don't have anything to do with role playing won't notice that. People who have a role playing background might notice certain things like, oh, okay, I see how this character has these traits and abilities, and he's useful in this situation, where this other guy is useful in this situation, which is the way the characters work in a role playing game. But that's not that different from fantasy, where you have your fighter and your magician, and each one brings something to the party.
Hmm.
So this is a fantasy in that sort of aspect, in that assembled ensemble team on a quest, but it is definitely in a science fiction universe. Could say maybe the science fiction is used as the magic, but that's not an original saying or anything, but sci-fi, technology is magic.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay. Cool. So one other thing that you mentioned was difficult themes in your writing. So walk me through some of your difficult themes, and are you trying to share a message with some people in regards to these themes, or is it just part of telling an engaging story?
I think it was part of telling the story, and I don't know that I noticed certain themes arising until after it was done. There's themes of getting older. These are, characters nearing, you retire early as a mercenary. It's not something you do until so they're not decrepit, but nearing the end of a career. And there's themes of past regrets, of getting past grudges. There's also themes of substance abuse and dealing with um, trauma and possibly PTSD sort of issues in there. Um, all sort of still mixed in with the what I hope is a fun adventure as well. The tone varies. The tone varies as you read through the book. there's funny moments, there's adventurous moments, there's also dark moments. There's I didn't shy away from graphic depictions of violence, and there's a couple of hopefully tastefully done adult scenes in there as well. It's 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 fairly well rounded as far as tonality. But yeah, the themes were not intentional as I went into it. They're things that I said, okay, well, if I was this character, what would I have a issue with here? And then I saw these things after I was done, sort of laid out for various
Hmm.
characters.
Yeah, well, I think, for lack of a better term, which is called like deep themes, are very important in writing because life is full of deep themes. And people need to get some reassurance that they're going in the right direction or that people are on the same path as them that have encountered these deep themes. So
Hmm.
I definitely don't discourage people from doing deep themes. I want to know why.
Yeah, I don't either. And several people who have read the book saw themes in there, or messages in there, or metaphorical statements in there that I certainly didn't intend and didn't see there. But people are welcome to take what they want from it, whether I intended it or not, and I'm perfectly happy with that. If some message strikes them that was never my intention to lay out for them, then that's great. Yeah. So people can take from it what they will.
Yeah. I'd like to invite you now to read an excerpt. I think you wanted to do that.
Yeah. Let me pop something open here.
Yeah, take your time.
I wasn't quite sure exactly what to read here. 'Cause I didn't want to do anything where, because the universe is a little convoluted and grows on you. I didn't want to do anything where I had to explain anything, but I also didn't want to do anything where I had any spoilers. So the best thing I thought maybe I'd just read something that gives people an example of my writing style and see if
Yeah,
that appeals to
perfect.
them or not. So I'm just opening to the dead center. This would be dead center of the book. And I'll do 2 pages. That ought to be about 5 minutes or so, if that's all right.
Cool. Yeah.
Okay. Let me grab a quick sip. All right. This is chapter 14. The overzealous sun glared earnestly above the Shammai city of Qatar, as was its usual habit to do so. To the south, billowed clouds gathered ranks built off steam from the sweltering jungles and made their way northward to interrupt the sun, as they had habits of their own to keep. Deep below the city, hidden from this impending battle to rule the sky, James Stansky, Dr. Magna, and Lady Opal of Capella waited with waning patience in the musty fungal passage where Celine Maraspice had led them. As she had promised, a second doorway was found within. Also as promised, it was currently firmly locked. This second door was newer, far less corroded than the first, or, for that matter, less corroded than everything down here. Both the portal at which they waited and the one from where they'd just come crossed paths perpendicularly with some sort of ancient storm drain, a moldy and foot-slick culvert built of the same ancient masonry that the outer wall had been. To the north, the subterranean gutter repeatedly forked and became narrowed, in numbers too great and sizes too small to be followed. To the south, toward the jungle and the rear wall of the old city, the channel led some 100 feet along to finally end at a wide, circular opening. It was here, through a rusty barricade of bars, the city's runoff from the frequent downpours would forge together, forming a mighty waterfall of wastewater, cascading down some 80 feet to the jungle floor below. Opal ventured this way as they waited, with James being quick to follow, and the two now stood at the mouth of the gated outlet. The Ashimar pressed her enraptured face between the bars, overlooking the lush rainforest that ran wild just beyond. The emerald green of the upper canopy was decorated with sporadic blossoms, fuchsia blooms of alarming size, the leaves and petals working together to obscure the mysteries beneath in the undergrowth. The lowest dips and valleys in the primeval terrain were further covered by a vaporous haze that hung over it, clinging to the jungle, unmoving in the still air. The sky above was still a bright blue, the shining sun highlighting each blade of greenery below, but at the far visible horizon's edge, pregnant clouds were lumbering closer, staining the otherwise sapphire sky with their dark purple bruised bellies. Rain was coming, and it would be preferable to be out of this tunnel when it did. It's like nothing I've ever seen before, Opal said to James. Have you ever been out deep within it? Oh, yeah, many times, he told her, although not usually to enjoy the scenery. She looked disappointed. But I can say, he offered, it makes even a big guy like me feel insignificant. The tree trunks can measure wider than a small house, circled with vines easily as thick as my waist. The flower blossoms, they're large enough for you to curl up and fall asleep in, and each single leaf can be as broad as the tent covers in the bazaar outside. I would love to explore it, she lamented. I'd love to explore lots of places before my lifetime sentence of being locked in my throne room begins. I could take you. The conversation was interrupted by the echoed groan of the second door swinging wide, and Tachyon called out to them to hurry back and join him. Whatever this space may have been in the eon in which it was built was long gone. It was now a clean, bright, state-of-the-art, and quite impressive workroom, not particularly large, similar to the interior of the Bug-Eye, with a host of machinery and equipment well organized throughout. A biobed in the middle, with imaging scanners hanging above, circuitry cutting tables, 3D polymer printers, and organic matrix accelerators to rival the ones in Tachyon's own biolabs. A bank of computers currently running some kind of skeletal imaging software were on one side. On the other, an array of security monitors showing the bazaar, the city, the jungle and back, all overlaid with IR and EM filters and AI threat assessment. All right, Tachyon said. Well, this guy's clearly no joke. A door opposite from where they just entered slowly opened, and Kai Kiliun, the guy's mage, entered the room. You sure about that, Tak? Stansky asked upon seeing him. The guy's mage was a Shammai man who appeared not a day younger than 1,000,000,000. Floating across the room upon a levitating disability chair, it was clear from the gauntness of his withered legs it had been some decades since he had stood upon them. His face was so cadaverously thin and sunken, that his large, flopped-over ears seemed almost elephantine. The man's thin, bloodless lips were as pale as the rest of his tissue-paper skin, and the color of his sallow eyes was obscured by a haunting film of gauzy white. He raised one bony, tremulous finger as he cruised silently across the workroom, directing the stunned pair of mercenaries to turn their attention toward the computer behind them. Tachyon and Stansky spun around to read the monitor. A list of options was displayed, from simple iris swaps to full all-over-body disguises, along with a price list beside each selection and a darknet cryptobank transfer portal. The human and the android skimmed down the price list and looked at each other. Yikes, Stansky said. Seems I've been in the wrong profession, Tachyon agreed. I'll leave it there. Oh, thank you.
Well, thank you for that. I really like your style and your descriptions, and also, side note, I think you've got great vocals, and I think you should do an audio version of your book if you haven't already.
You know, that's people have been saying that. I've been looking at audiobook narrators and considering doing it myself. I know it's a lot of work. But it is one way to make sure that it's read the way I want it to be read, I suppose. Maybe your audience could do a sort of informal poll in the comments for me. Let me know if they like when the authors read their own books, or do they prefer, what you call a professional narrator.
Yeah, go ahead and leave a comment there if you think that he should do his own book, or if you think he shouldn't, you can also leave a comment.
Yeah, that's fine too. I'd like to know. Yeah.
I think authors, they have great inflection on their own narration, like of what the characters are saying. Like when I'm writing something, because I've popped my works into like AI narration just to kind of like listen to it, and it's just so dead. Like you have your own inflections as the author, which I think are amazing.
Yeah, and I have done a couple of tests where I've uploaded a chapter, and certain narrators are wonderful, but they're saying things not in the way that I would have said them, and not the way that I think that, you can change the whole meaning of a sentence by saying it, putting the accent in a different place. So knowing that it was inflected correctly means a lot. Whether or not I can perform it well is something else. But it's something that I'm considering, and yeah, and I'd like to know what your viewers think on that.
Awesome.
Um,
Um, Final question for you here from me. So you said that you won an award, 2023 American Fiction Awards in the Space and Alien category. So
the
how'd that
finalist.
happen?
I was
I'm
a
sorry.
finalist. Not, I didn't win it. It was a finalist. I
Oh,
was one
okay.
of five finalists. But I still, it's an honor to be named a finalist at all.
How were you
Um,
nominated for that?
that was self-submitted. That was my unproofread version that I submitted. So maybe if I had waited a little longer, I might have actually won it. But that was submitted to Bookfest back in April, something like that, when I was starting my last round of proofreads and edits, and it was announced at the end of September, I believe, or beginning of September. I forget when it came out. That they announced the winners. So I was very honored by that, and pleased to hear it. Yeah.
Cool. Well, any final comments before I let you go?
Um, um, no, not that I can think of. No, I mean, yeah, if anybody does end up reading the book based on this, I would love for them to visit my website. And as a writer, you don't really hear from your readers very much. It's not like you can go and sit in the back of a theater and watch your movie. You know what I mean? So generally, I love hearing feedback. So if anybody does end up reading it, I'd love to hear your feedback on it, whether in review form or contact me through my website.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll go ahead and put links to all your stuff in the description. And everybody, John W. Grundy, thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it very much. Thank you.